Water and Sanitation Minister Senzo Mchunu says it's a sin to not provide clean water to people. He was speaking at the National Water and Sanitation Summit. The conference heard that in some areas up to 60% of water is lost. This leads many to have to share streams, rivers and dams with animals, and that may lead to the outbreaks of diseases like the typhoid outbreak currently in the country. Mchunu blamed the poor service on failing infrastructure, lack of money and poor skills. So let's ask the Water Department's Leonardo Manus what it's doing to stop this sin. Thank you very much, Mr. Manus, for your time this afternoon. So we know that this summit was attended by both internal and external role players after the challenges had been identified by Minister Mchunu at provincial working sessions. So surely the point of this summit was not to rehash all those challenges, but to find solutions. And we want to find out whether those solutions that were mapped out or were brainstormed are workable and implementable within a certain time frame.
Yes, surely. Thank you very much for having me. I think the first point that we have to raise, I think that what you let in with is that, yes, we are concerned about the prevalence of the typhoid virus that's currently in the country, but not to, at this point in time, perhaps make it to be linked to water supply at this point in time. Even the National Institute for Communicable Diseases confirmed that should it have been water, there would have been a much faster rate of infection. It would have been much more widespread. So at this point in time, it's highly unlikely that it would be tap water that is causative as far as that is concerned. But in terms of the conference, yes, it focused, or the summit, it focused a lot in terms of understanding what the concepts are that have to be addressed, and then, but more time was spent on trying to come up with solutions. And it stretched from the point that we had to look at currently in terms of the water services viability in municipalities, in terms of the revenue, the tariff, the structures that is being put in place, whether it's adequate to sustain the services that is being given, as well in terms of the standards that we have. Is it still acceptable that we have basic services or water services standards that was set in place in 1994 as part of the RDP program in this day? Perhaps it is a time now that the summit, one of the resolutions were that we have to look in terms of increasing the standard of acceptability of services and get the municipalities or other institutions to assist to render these services according to the expectations of the South African people.
One of the suggestions was for an urgent need to overhaul water boards. Tell us more about that.
Yes, definitely. The minister's focus ever since he started in the department was to ensure that we have to look at our current water boards as it's set up, whether it is viable as it stands. And we have to understand that, noting the fact that there's such high debt towards these water boards from municipalities and those who might not be paying for services, and municipalities who are not paying for services that's rendered by the water boards, has caused a lot of our water boards to be in a state of not being viable. The conference or the summit spent a lot of time in that space as well to understand how it needs to go about to actually look at the viability of water boards, and to strengthen those who are strong enough, and to perhaps come up with alternative measures for those who are not viable and not strong enough. The minister's focus have been on Sedibeng Water Board at this point in time, and perhaps others are soon to follow to see as to how, as based on the outcomes of the summit, to see how we can have to look at other water boards as well to ensure that we have a stronger and a viable entities that will look after bulk water services, but to also expand their role and duties to go beyond the bulk water services and perhaps look into the space of reticulation of water so that people can get water in their houses with high levels of assurance, as well as the wastewater. It's a space that the water boards have not been moved in perhaps aggressively in the past. Municipalities are struggling in the sanitation side. The Green Drop report is one of the resolutions also of the summit that will be released at the end of March. And we will take cue of that report as to how we will move into the space of wastewater as well.
Mr. Manus, in the last couple of days we've run a number of stories here on ENCA about lack of water supply due specifically to ailing infrastructure that in some cases is responsible for the loss of up to 60% of the water in an area. And that ailing infrastructure or dysfunctional infrastructure can be said to be directly as a result of a lack of proper maintenance. The lack of skills has been identified by Minister Mchunu himself. Do you think cronyism is responsible for the lack of skills in the department? And if not, how is it going to be fixed?
Well, in the first place, as it was said in the past, is that water services were predominantly in the space of municipalities and local government. The current minister just made a decision that we will not be using that language no more, and that the National Department of Water Sanitation has to move in to actually assist. And we're not going to, at this point in time, pass the buck or pass the blame to another institution or another entity. And the department has now to shape up and move into that spaces as well, where local government requires the assistance to actually render services according to expectations. And that is the cue that we've taken from the summit as well. The department has not been perhaps renowned for doing well in the past as far as its viability itself is concerned. We have turned that around. The trading account is no longer in the red. There's no more overdraft in that situation. So I think that we can put that chapter behind us as far as the department that has not been itself functioning as it's supposed to be. We don't have all the skills to take over services for that matter. But we are at this point in time gearing ourselves through a 10-point plan to actually get to the point where we can make a noticeable difference in the space of water services, water supply and sanitation for that matter, because we have set ourselves quite tough targets to actually reach, and there's nobody else other than the public to hold us accountable to that more. So we have to shape up, and that is what we plan to do.